Imagine paying 2,000 euros a night only to spend like 3 hours trapped in a sweltering traffic jam, right?
Yeah.
Just sitting there watching a backpacker who paid 30 euros sail happily past you on a ferry.
Oh, that is the ultimate travel paradox, honestly.
Welcome to the reality of Lake Como in 2026.
Because you have this destination that occupies this very specific, uh, fiercely glamorous piece of real estate in the global imagination. But the gap between the postcard you have in your head and the physical logistical reality on the ground, I mean, it is absolutely monumental.
And that gap is exactly what we are exploring today on our Dupe Dive. We're pulling all our insights from this incredibly detailed, frankly, brutally honest travel dossier compiled by a travel analysis duo known as Phil and H.
Yeah, their entire mission is basically to strip away the tourism board spin.
Right.
And just look at the cold, hard logistics to figure out if these legendary destinations are actually worth it.
Exactly. And to set the stage for exactly what we are unpacking today, I am going to read you the exact hook that Phil uses to open their breakdown. Listen to this. He says, "There is a hostel dorm on Lake Como that costs 30 euros a night. George Clooney's villa is 15 minutes away by public ferry, and he paid 10 million euros for it. Same lake, same mountain backdrop, same water. The difference is not the view, it's knowing where to look."
I mean, it is just a brilliant distillation of the problem. And right after that, his co-host, H, introduces their show with this. Welcome to Phil and H Travel. Is it worth it? Today we are at Lake Como in northern Italy. But this episode is about the gap between what Lake Como costs if you fall for the postcard version and what it actually costs if you understand the ferry network, the village hierarchy, and the one trap that destroys most people's holidays before they even reach Bellagio.
So we are taking their entire dossier, like every fact, every price point, every hidden trap, and we're breaking it down.
Because if you are listening to this and planning a trip to northern Italy, you really need to know how to navigate this place. You don't want to fall into the traps that are waiting to swallow your budget.
Or your sanity, frankly.
Exactly. So let's start by shattering the illusion right out of the gate. The source material hits us with a demographic shock that completely reframes what this destination actually is in 2026.
Oh, the numbers here are wild.
They really are. Here is the statistic. On a single peak summer day, 300,000 visitors arrive at this lake.
Wait, hold on. 300,000 people in a single day.
Every single day in peak summer.
How is that even physically possible? I'm picturing these, tiny medieval cliffside roads and little stone ferry docks. Where do all those physical bodies actually go?
Well, they don't fit. That is the entire crux of the crisis. You have 300,000 daily visitors descending on a destination that has a permanent year-round population of just 85,000.
Oh, wow. So it's almost 4 times the local population flooding in every 24 hours.
Right. And you have to understand the physical infrastructure here. We aren't talking about a sprawling metropolis with a massive grid system or, underground subways.
Yeah, it's basically a lake in the mountains.
Exactly. It's a narrow strip of deep water flanked by incredibly steep alpine cliffs. It's served by a single-lane road network that was literally carved out of rock centuries ago.
And the public ferry system.
And the ferries, yeah. But none of this, absolutely none of it, was designed for viral 21st century tourism volume. It is a fundamental physical clash between modern travel demand and 12th century geography.
Which honestly perfectly explains the policy response they outline in the dossier. Because the mayor of Como City, Alessandro Appinis, he's actually come out and publicly admitted that his destination is suffering from what he calls an excess of tourism.
Yeah, and you don't usually hear politicians talking down their own golden goose, do you?
No, usually they are trying to cram as many wallets into their town as possible.
Right, but you don't hear it unless the goose is literally crushing the town to death. He isn't exaggerating for political effect here. He is actively designing a Venice-style daytripper entry fee for the city of Como.
Wow.
It's the exact same mechanism Venice now uses, and it's born out of the exact same desperation to filter the sheer volume of human traffic.
And if that fee lands, and the dossier says it's slated for 2026 or early 2027, I mean, that entirely rewrites the budget strategy for anyone using Como City as a base camp.
Oh, complete?
Because a massive chunk of budget travelers stay in Como City precisely because it's the cheapest access point.
Yeah.
But if you suddenly have to pay a daily tax just to walk out of your hotel, the math changes.
Precisely. And it isn't just the city hall reacting either. We are seeing major capacity corrections at the physical sites themselves.
Right.
Take Via del Balbianello.
Oh, right. The famous one.
Yeah, this is the stunning terraced villa on a wooded peninsula that you've seen and Casino Royale in Star Wars. It's arguably the most famous site on the entire lake.
And what did they do?
They have unilaterally cut their daily capacity from 2,000 visitors down to 1,200.
Wait, really? That is almost a 40% cut in ticket sales. That's millions of euros left on the table.
Yeah, but the Italian Fund for the Environment, who manages it, they justified it as a drastic but totally necessary decision.
Why? Just the crowds.
The physical wear and tear. The sheer physical weight and friction of 2,000 people a day was literally degrading the historic structures and the gardens. It's a binary choice. Cut the capacity or lose the villa entirely to erosion.
Man, that's sad, but makes total sense.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, these aren't just abstract discussions about overtourism. These are real-world decisions that dictate whether you, the traveler, can even get through the front gate and what kind of premium you're going to pay when you do.
Right. And speaking of what you pay, this brings us to the extreme cost spread, because this absolutely blew my mind. The dossier lays out a pricing disparity that is almost comical.
It's completely wild.
Imagine Lake Como as a place operating in two parallel dimensions simultaneously. In Dimension A, you have the Grand Hotel Tremezzo charging between 1,450 and 2,200 euros per night.
Insane.
And then you have Villa d'Este down in Cernobbio, the legendary spot where tech billionaires and European royalty hang out. And that starts around 800 euros a night just for a basic room.
Right, that's the quintessential luxury dimension.
Yeah.
The postcard brought to life.
But then in Dimension B, you have the new Generation Hostel Como Lake. It charges about 30 to 35 euros a night for a dorm bed.
Wow.
So you have the 30 euro reality and the 2,000 euro reality separated by what? A 15-minute train ride? And the crazy part is you are looking at the exact same water and the exact same mountains. The sky is the exact same color.
Which raises an incredibly important question, right? How does geography aggressively dictate those two realities? To understand that, we really have to look at the physical layout of the lake, the crowds, and what they call the calendar strategy.
Okay, so let's get into the geography. Lake Como is a Y-shaped body of water.
Exactly. Imagine an upside-down Y carved into the Lombardy landscape, about 150 kilometers north of Milan.
And the split of that Y, like the crotch of the Y, if you will, that happens right at Bellagio.
Correct. The lake splits there. So the western arm leads down to Como City and villages like Cernobbio, Tremezzo, and Leno. The eastern arm leads down to Varenna and Lecco.
And then there's a top part.
Right. The northern tip feeds all the way up into a town called Colico near the Swiss border.
Okay, I'm looking at this mental map right now. But why does it matter so much for my budget? Like, does George Clooney really alter the price of a cappuccino 10 miles away?
Oh, absolutely he does. And it's because of what Fel and H call the celebrity postcard hierarchy.
A celebrity postcard hierarchy.
Yeah. The prices and the crowds are not uniform across that upside-down Y. They aggressively track the most famous sightlines.
So if a place looks famous...
Exactly. If a village looks like a postcard and has a Hollywood PR association, like Bellagio or Tremezzo, the prices skyrocket. But if it's just a beautiful historic Italian town on the exact same lake, but without the celebrity buzz, the prices plummet.
Wow. So knowing where on the Y you are is crucial. But the dossier makes it very clear that knowing when you were there is just as vital.
The calendar strategy.
Yes. They provide a meticulous month-by-month breakdown. And I want us to really linger on the prices here because they tell a fascinating story about travel psychology. Let's start with January and February.
Right. So that is the absolute cheapest time of the year. The average hotel rate in Bellagio drops to around 112 euros a night.
But I'm guessing I'm not packing a swimsuit, right? It's cold.
Oh, very cold, often gray, and most of the iconic restaurants are totally shuttered.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Plus, the ferry services are running severely reduced commuter schedules. You aren't going to be sipping an Aperol Spritz in the sun. But, and this is a big, but it is genuinely atmospheric.
Like moody.
Very moody. It is completely crowd-free. It really suits solo travelers, photographers, or couples who literally want the lake to themselves and don't mind wearing a heavy wool coat.
Okay, then we move into March and April. The light improves, prices start creeping up, but the dossier explicitly warns that Easter weekend is catastrophic.
Catastrophic.
They literally say, do not attempt Easter unless you have booked 6 months in advance.
It's just a mob scene.
But then late April arrives, and that is when the azaleas and camellias bloom at Villa Carlotta.
Which is an incredible visual draw, and that leads us right into May and June. According to Fel and H, this is the ultimate sweet spot.
The golden window.
Yes. The math supports it completely. Prices are 30 to 40% lower than the absolute peak. It's finally warm enough to swim or at least lounge comfortably by the water.
And the ferries are back?
Yep, the ferries have switched over to their full summer schedules, so logistics are easy. A boutique hotel in a town like Varenna will run you between 120 and 160 euros a night. Logistically and financially, this is the smartest move you can make.
And then we hit July and August.
Oh boy.
The peak nightmare. The dossier says Bellagio Village is completely overwhelmed. They actually describe it as Disney World on a lake.
Oof, that paints a picture.
Right. The average hotel in Bellagio jumps from that 112 winter rate to 422 euros a night.
Wow.
And if you want a peak Saturday in August, you are looking at 780 euros or more.
And remember, that is just the financial cost. The logistical cost is far worse.
What do you mean?
Well, road traffic on the Western Road, the SS 340, creates 2 to 3 hour traffic jams. Day tripper volumes are at their absolute maximum, just swarming off the trains from Milan.
So what's their advice?
The advice in the dossier is incredibly blunt. Avoid July and August completely unless you are staying far outside the core tourist triangle.
Okay, then comes September. Now, if you're listening to this, you might be thinking, oh, September. The kids are back in school, the summer rush is over, it'll be cheaper.
But you'd be wrong.
Wrong. I was shocked by this. September is actually the priciest month in Bellagio, averaging 867 euros a night.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is the market dynamics. Why does it jump so high?
I have no idea.
Because September has beautiful, soft, autumnal light. The water has been warming up all summer, so it's actually better for swimming than June. And the intense, chaotic day tripper crowds decline after the first week.
Okay, so it gets nicer, but why the massive price hike?
So what happens is the luxury and upscale demographic, the couples, the retirees, the high-end honeymooners, they heavily target September to avoid the families.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the demand shifts from budget volume to high-end exclusivity. The shoulder season price benefit doesn't actually arrive until the second half of the month.
That is so interesting. Finally, we have October and November. You get dramatic autumn colors. Prices fall sharply. The fog can roll in heavy from mid-October, but the dossier notes it has a beautiful, moody vibe.
And places like Menaggio and Varenna start to feel genuinely local again.
Which is what you want.
Exactly. To really summarize that calendar strategy, you have to look at the multiplier effect. In Bellagio, peak summer rates are 4 to 7 times higher than in January.
7 times?
Yeah. But if you look at off-peak villages, places like Lecco or Colico on the northern and eastern edges, the variance is much flatter. They are only 2 to 3 times higher in summer.
Which reinforces a central thesis of the dossier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Choosing the right base not only cuts your costs dramatically, it completely insulates you from the worst of the seasonal price gouging.
Spot on.
Okay, so let's say you've picked your month, you've looked at the map, now you actually have to get there. Because almost everyone arrives via Milan. And this brings us to arrival psychology and Milan transit.
Oh, and this transport split is where your holiday begins to either succeed beautifully or fail miserably. Let's unpack the routes.
Right. The dossier is very clear on the correct choice here. You want the Trenord regional train from Milan Cadorna station to Como San Giovanni station. It costs €4.80 and it takes about 35 minutes.
Super easy.
Yeah, you don't need a travel agent. You just buy the ticket on the Trenord app or tap at the station machines.
It is simple, incredibly cheap, and fast. But, many tourists fail to do this basic research, and they get lured into the fast train from Milan Central.
Oh, the Central trap.
Right. It is slightly faster once it gets moving, but it's more expensive, and crucially, it's way less frequent. Or worse, if they're landing at Malpensa Airport, they take the Malpensa Express all the way into Milan Cadorna, only to connect back out to the Como train.
Which is backtracking, right?
Huge backtracking.
Yeah.
That costs 15 to 20 euros and takes about 75 minutes total.
And then, of course, there is the car hire trap. We are going to fully dissect that disaster in a few minutes, but consider this some heavy foreshadowing. Do not rent a car in Milan in the summer.
Just don't do it.
Seriously, just don't.
So, assuming you made the smart choice, you take the €4.80 regional train, you step off at Como San Giovanni, and here's where we hit a massive psychological phenomenon. The arrival letdown.
I love how the dossier describes the sensory reality of this moment because it is so true.
It's hilarious.
You exit a functional, slightly gritty Italian railway station, and you are standing in a busy commercial town. You hear scooters revving, you see office workers, you see traffic lights. The lake is still a 15-minute walk away.
Yep.
Yes, Como City has a beautiful waterfront. The architecture reflects its heritage in the silk trade. The Duomo is impressive. But the town itself is urban. It's a workaday city.
And it forces an immediate psychological recalibration.
Hmm.
The tourist steps out, luggage in hand, and their first instinct is, wait, this is not what I imagined. Where is George Clooney? Where are the cypress trees? This isn't the postcard.
Because what you imagined is Bellagio.
Exactly.
And to get there, you have to drag your suitcase 15 minutes to the waterfront and board a ferry. The slow ferry takes an hour and costs 5 to 10 euros. The fast hydrofoil costs 15 to 20 euros return.
And this crossing, the dossier says, is the absolute revelation.
This is where Lake Como finally reveals itself. The sensory shift is profound. As the ferry pulls away from the Como City docks, the water turns this deep, mesmerizing cerulean blue.
Beautiful.
You start to see cypress trees stacked vertically up the sheer cliff faces. Ancient villas painted in butter yellow, terracotta, and sage green start appearing along the shoreline, almost hidden in the foliage. You can see the snow-capped Alps on the northern horizon.
And even the smell shifts.
Oh, for sure.
You go from inhaling city bus exhaust to the smell of deep, cold water, cut grass, and like the scent of espresso wafting from the little ferry bar. They call it the 90-second moment where every Italian holiday photo you've ever seen suddenly makes sense. You finally feel like you've arrived.
But then the ferry docks, and you get the Bellagio reality check.
Yeah, unfortunately.
You step off the boat into what should be one of the most beautiful romantic pedestrian experiences in Europe. But if it's July, you are stepping into a shoulder-to-shoulder scrum.
It's a wall of people.
Selfie sticks swinging at eye level, tour groups being herded through tiny cobbled medieval lanes by guides holding up little colored flags.
So the psychological arc of day one is just wild, right? You have the gritty arrival letdown in Como City, the majestic cinematic ferry revelation on the water, and then the overwhelming claustrophobic reality check of the Bellagio crowds.
It is a total sensory roller coaster, which is exactly why the dossier insists that your accommodation base camp is the most critical decision of your entire trip.
Yeah, they actually call getting this wrong the 300% mistake.
The 300% mistake, that is such a powerful way to frame it.
It really emphasizes that choosing the right base village is far more critical than choosing the right hotel. If you get the village wrong, you pay a massive premium, up to 300%, for the exact same access to the lake.
Okay, so let's walk through the tiers, starting with the backpacker tier.
Right, so we have the new Generation Hostel Como Lake, which we mentioned earlier. It's around 30 to 35 euros a night. It's clean, functional, has a shared kitchen.
Sounds solid.
Then there is the Ostello Bello Lake Como, also in Como City, but closer to the center, running around 45 to 50 euros a night. It has a more boutique feel, a rooftop terrace. It's a bit more social.
And if you are past your dorm days and want a private room on a budget,
then you can look for budget privates in towns like Lecco or Menaggio for 55 to 75 euros a night. There are less glamorous towns than Bellagio, yes, but they are fully integrated into the lake's transport network. You get the exact same ferry access for a fraction of the cost.
then we step up to the mid-range tier. This is where you find charming little guest houses in Varenna. In the shoulder season like May, June, September, you are looking at 120 to 180 euros a night.
Nice.
Or you can find boutique options in Menaggio for 130 to 200 euros. I want you to contrast that with the Hotel Bellagio, located right in the center of the famous village. In the shoulder season, a basic room there is 200 to 350 euros, and in peak summer, it easily shoots past 450 a night.
So you are paying a massive premium simply for the word Bellagio on your booking confirmation.
Exactly.
Next is the family tier. The dossier highly recommends looking at agriturismos. If you aren't familiar, these are farm stays or rural apartments, usually up in the hills along the SP 583 road between Como and Bellagio.
How much do those run?
You get a spacious apartment or a large family room for 150 to 200 euros a night.
Oh, that's not bad at all. And you get lake views from a distance. It's incredibly quiet. You probably have a pool, and the kids have space to run around.
Exactly. Or you look at apartment rentals in quieter villages on the Western Arm, places like Leno or Argegno, which run 200 to 280 euros a night for a four-person setup with a kitchen.
That makes a lot of sense for families. And finally, the luxury tier. We already mentioned the Grand Hotel Tremezzo at 1,450 to 2,200, Villa d'Este at 800 plus.
Insane numbers.
But the dossier introduces another really interesting option, the Filario Hotel in Luceno. It runs 350 to 600 euros a night. It's smaller, very design forward, situated in a much quieter village, and represents a really strong value entry point into true luxury on the lake without paying the famous name markup.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Now let's look at what the hosts themselves chose, because they put their money where their mouth is. Phil's pick for the ultimate base camp is Varenna.
I completely see why. It hits the mid-range perfectly at 130 to 150 euros a night. You get genuine village life, a direct rail connection back to Milan, and crucially, you are a 10-minute ferry beat to Bellagio.
Yep, it's super convenient. And H's pick is Menagio. It has the hostel, making it accessible for backpackers. The ferry connections across the Central Lake are excellent.
It's just very functional.
Exactly. But more importantly, it has a genuine main square with a local aperitivo culture, a bank, a supermarket. It's a town that functions as a real community, not just a performance piece for tourists.
So I want to pause here and dig into this because there is a fascinating psychology at play. If you are listening to this, ask yourself, why do tourists obsess over sleeping in Bellagio?
It's a great question.
Why do they willingly pay double or triple the price, endure massive crowds, and drag their luggage over cobblestones rather than paying less to sleep in Varenna or Menagio and simply looking at Bellagio from across the lake?
It is the irresistible power of the named brand.
The brand.
Yeah, people want to geotag their location as Bellagio on Instagram. They want the perceived status of waking up in the famous town, even if the reality is that the town is impossibly crowded, overpriced, and loud.
Right.
The logistics-first mindset that Phil and H advocate says, bypass the ego, base yourself in a functional, beautiful, cheaper town, and commute 10 minutes into the postcard when you want to see it.
And that logic bypassing the tourist ego extends directly into our next topic. Because if where you sleep dictates your budget, what you eat completely dictates your experience.
Oh, absolutely.
The dossier outlines two entirely separate food systems operating simultaneously on Lake Como.
Yes, there's the aggressive, highly visible tourist food system, and then there's the hidden, authentic regional identity.
And the local dishes sound absolutely incredible, but you have to know what to look for.
Definitely.
We are talking about misaltino. This is a traditional dish of sun-dried lake shad fish, preserved with salt and bay leaves, served with grilled polenta. It costs 12 to 16 euros in local trattorias in Varenna, Bolano, or Colico.
And let me guess, you don't see it on the main tourist strips.
Exactly. You will almost never see it on a waterfront tourist menu with English translations.
Right. Or what about polenta uncia? This isn't your standard yellow cornmeal. This is buckwheat polenta mixed with copious amounts of melted alpine butter, garlic, and local casera cheese.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
It's a heavy, satisfying mountain dish designed for farmers and fishermen. In a local restaurant tucked away in an alley, it costs 8 euros.
8 euros.
Yeah, but if you manage to find it in a Bellagio hotel dining room, you will pay around 22 euros for the exact same dish.
Insane. And sayat. I had never heard of this. They are crispy buckwheat fritters filled with that same melting casera cheese. It sounds perfect with a cold beer or a glass of wine after a long hike.
Well, speaking of wine, the local wine is the Valtellina DOC, coming from the terrace valleys directly above Lombardy. You can walk into a local supermarket and buy a fantastic bottle of Sicella or Inferno Red for 5 to 8 euros.
5 to 8 euros is incredible.
Right, but that exact same bottle, served by a waiter at a lakefront restaurant, will cost you 28 to 45 euros.
The price gouging mechanisms are wild. Look at the humble espresso. On the Bellagio waterfront, where you're paying for the view of the lake, an espresso is 4 to 5 euros.
Which is highway robbery in Italy.
Totally. Walk literally 2 streets back, up the hill, into the residential section to a local bar where the mechanics get their coffee, and that exact same shot of espresso is 1 euro and 20 cents to 1.50.
The same goes for dinner. A generic, uninspired pasta dish designed for the tourist palate on the waterfront is 22 to 28 euros. A rich, authentic pasta dish at a local trattoria in Varenna or Leno is 9 to 13 euros.
So how do you beat the system? How do you eat well without going broke?
You go to the supermarket.
Yes. The dossier details the supermarket base camps. You have Esselunga in Como City. They call it Italy's best budget supermarket chain. You can get 500 grams of high-quality pasta for 99 cents.
Wow.
Good local wine for under 5 euros. Freshly baked bread for 1.80 euro. If you booked an apartment or a hostel with a kitchen, that is your absolute base camp for self-catering.
There's also a Conad in Menaggio, which is smaller but covers all the essentials, and a Carrefour Express in Como City, which is slightly more expensive, but very convenient for quick trips before you jump on a train.
And this brings us to Phil's absolute non-negotiable rule. He is adamant about this. Do not, under any circumstances, eat on Salita Serboloni in Bellagio.
To give you a visual, that is the main, steeply sloped, cobbled street leading straight up from the ferry dock. It is the most photographed street on the lake.
Right. Phil points out that every single restaurant on that street is marking up their prices 250 to 350% compared to Como City.
Just for the location.
Exactly. And the quality of the food is entirely generic. It's food engineered for people who are only going to eat there once in their lives and will never leave a review.
So what's his advice?
Walk 2 streets uphill into the actual residential section, or simply eat before you arrive. Treat Bellagio as a place to look at things, not a place to eat.
That's brilliant. It's also vital to understand Italian dining etiquette, which the dossier helpfully outlines, because tourists lose a lot of money and goodwill here.
Oh, this is so important.
In Italy, you do not ask the waiter to itemize the bill so everyone can pay for exactly what they order.
I really hate that.
It is considered incredibly rude and a logistical nightmare for the staff. You either split it evenly down the middle across all credit cards, or one person pays the whole thing and the others buy the next round.
Also, beware the table service premium. This trips up so many Americans.
The coperto, right?
Yes. If you sit down at a cafe table in a piazza, you trigger table service prices. You are essentially paying rent for the chair. If you stand at the bar to drink your coffee and eat your pastry exactly like the locals do, it is always significantly cheaper.
And finally, tipping. Tipping is not mandatory in Italy. The waitstaff are legally paid a living wage. They are professionals.
So no 20%.
No, rounding up the bill, leaving a 1 or 2 euro coin on the table is appreciated, but leaving 20% like you would in the US is completely unnecessary and sometimes even confusing to them.
Okay, so we've covered the psychology of where you sleep and the hidden systems of what you eat. Let's put it all together into the daily out-of-pocket budget.
Let's do the math.
If you are planning a trip, this is the math you really need. I am going to walk through this because it really emphasizes how wildly different these experiences can be based entirely on the choices you make before you leave home.
Let's start with the low or backpacker budget.
Okay, we are looking at roughly 70 euros per person per day.
That's super reasonable.
Right. That breaks down to 32 euros for a bed like the new Generation Hostel in Como or a cheap private room in Menaggio, 18 euros for food, which means eating self-catered meals from Esselunga for breakfast and lunch, and maybe finding one cheap local trattoria for dinner.
Okay, what about getting around?
10 euros for transport, utilizing the regional train and ferry network smartly, and 5 euros for attractions, keeping in mind that most of the beautiful villages and walking trails are completely free.
Now compare that to the Midrange Couple budget. This is approximately 167 euros per person per day.
Let's hear the breakdown.
That's 90 euros for the bed, assuming you are splitting a 180 euro boutique guest house in Varenna. 38 euros for food, so you get a hotel breakfast, a lovely village trattoria lunch, maybe some self-catered snacks for aperitivo by the water, and one nice sit-down dinner out.
Sounds like a perfect day.
Yeah. And then 14 euros for transport, which gets you a very flexible ferry day pass.
Mm-hmm.
And 15 euros for attractions, like the 10 euro entry to Villa Carlotta and a few cafe stops.
And then the high luxury budget. This jumps to roughly 575 euros per person per day.
Ouch.
And that's at minimum. You're spending 400 euros or more just for your half of a room at a place like Grand Hotel Tremezzo. 90 euros for food expensive hotel breakfasts, waterfront Bellagio lunches, multi-course villa dinners.
And private boats, right?
Oh, yeah. 30 euros for transport because you are adding private boat taxi supplements to avoid the public ferries, and 25 euros for attractions, like privately guided villa tours.
Now, there is also a fourth category, the dossier addresses, which is very relevant today, the digital nomad reality.
Yes, if you are listening to this from your home office right now thinking, I should just move my laptop to Lake Como for a month, the dossier has a harsh reality check for you.
It's not going to be cheap.
No. If you aim for a monthly base in Como City, a room in a shared flat or a modest studio runs 650 to 800 euros a month.
Which isn't terrible, but then
Then add 200 euros for Esselunga groceries, 80 euros for transport, 50 to 100 euros for a co-working space or cafe coffees, and maybe 200 euros for dining out a few times a week. You are looking at a total of roughly 1,200 to 1,400 euros a month.
But the dossier is very clear on this point.
Yeah.
The lake itself is not a nomad hub. This isn't Bali or Lisbon. It is a holiday spot.
Right.
You can only pull off those nomad numbers if you base yourself strictly in the commercial industrial center of Como City, far away from the picturesque villages.
The unsexy part of the lake.
Exactly. The internet in the historic villages can be spotty, and the cafe culture just isn't designed for someone sitting with a laptop for 4 hours.
If we look at these four budgets, the mid-range option is just fascinating to me. Mathematically, spending 167 euros a day in Varenna seems to deliver the absolute highest authentic Italian experience per euro spent.
I totally agree with that.
You aren't suffering in a hot dorm room, but you aren't isolated in a 2,000 euro luxury bubble that separates you from the real culture either. You are just eating good local food, walking the historic streets, and using the ferries intelligently.
It is the absolute optimization point. But, and this is crucial, even at that optimization point, if you don't understand the logistics, you can still fall victim to absolute disasters.
Which brings us to the core of the dossier, the three logistics traps.
These are the mistakes that actively ruin vacations.
Let's get into them. Trap number 1, the Bellagio ferry queue. We touched on this earlier, but let's explain the actual mechanism of why this happens. Let's say a tourist books a hotel in Como City because they found a great deal online.
Right. They think they're saving money.
Exactly. They plan a romantic day trip to Bellagio. They wake up, have breakfast, and head to the Como ferry dock in July at around 9:30 a.m. What happens next?
Well, they encounter a queue for the 5 to 10 euro slow ferry that stretches for 45 to 90 minutes.
90 minutes?
Yes, and it is a massive line of people standing on asphalt in direct sun with absolutely no shade.
It's brutal. So they overheat, they get sunburned. Because the line is so long, they miss the first ferry because it hits capacity. They have to wait an hour to board the second one. By the time the slow boat makes all its stops, they finally arrive in Bellagio at 11:30 a.m. or noon.
Which is precisely the exact moment when every other day tripper on the entire lake is also arriving.
It's a perfect storm.
Yeah, the streets are gridlocked. They spend 2 hours shuffling through a massive crowd. They can't get a table for lunch, and then they realize they have to queue all over again in the mid-afternoon heat just to get a boat back.
So they return to Como City exhausted, underwhelmed, and 20 euros poorer, wondering what the hype was all about.
But the fix is so simple. Base in Varenna. Take the €4.60 public ferry that takes exactly 10 minutes to cross the water.
10 minutes versus an hour.
Right. And leave at 7:30 in the morning. You walk the completely empty, silent lanes of Bellagio. You have a beautiful, peaceful coffee in the piazza, and you're back on the boat to Varenna for a relaxing lunch, right as the sweaty masses from Como are just stepping off their boats in a panic.
Trap number 2 is perhaps even more stressful and arguably dangerous. The hired car on the SS340.
Oh, this one gives me anxiety just thinking about it.
Renting a car on the SS340 isn't freedom. It's essentially paying a massive premium to lock yourself in a luxury prison cell with no air conditioning.
Sir.
You see all these romanticized travel blogs and Instagram reels saying, explore Lake Como at your own pace, rent a vintage convertible and feel the wind in your hair.
And the mechanism here is a total failure to understand the physical reality of the road. The SS340 is the primary western lakeside road. In theory, you drive up from Milan, you stop at cute villages, and you breeze into Tremezzo for a lovely, elegant lunch.
In theory.
But in practice, it is a narrow, single-lane road carved directly into a cliff face centuries ago.
With blind hairpin turns, massive tour buses coming the other way, 0 passing places, and a 200-meter drop down to the water on one side.
It's terrifying.
And what happens when a tour bus meets a delivery truck on a blind corner?
Everything stops.
Yeah.
Completely stops. And in the peak of summer, it devolves into a stationary 12 to 15-kilometer traffic jam.
Just a parking lot.
Yeah, the dossier actually reports on couples who hired expensive cars, got stuck in this jam for 3 hours in the blistering heat, lost their phone signal in the tunnel so they couldn't even use the GPS. And then they finally arrived in Tremezzo at 4:00 p.m., only to find their lunch restaurant closed its kitchen at 2:00 p.m.
It is a total nightmare. The fix. We said it before, but we will say it again. Rely on the Trenner train plus the ferries. Let the lake itself be your road.
Exactly. And then we have trap number 3, The Como city is Lake Como deception.
This is so sneaky because it directly targets the budget-conscious traveler.
Right.
You go on a budget booking site, you search the broad term Lake Como. The cheapest results are all located in Como City. The listing shows gorgeous, generic photos of the water. You book it thinking you snagged an incredible deal.
But the mechanism of the trap is that Como City is a busy industrial hub located at the extreme southern tip of the lake. The link views from the city are fine, but they are flat.
They aren't the postcard views?
Exactly. They are not the dramatic mountain plunging into water views of Varenna or Bellagio that you see in the movies.
So you essentially save money on the hotel rate, but you end up spending 15 to 20 euros every single day on ferry tickets just to commute to the pretty parts of the lake.
Which eats up all your savings.
Yep. You lose half your trip in transit, standing in lines, and you never actually get to wake up inside the postcard. You are constantly commuting to your vacation.
So the fix here is to use Como City strategically, not exclusively. Stay there your first and last night to take advantage of the easy train links back to Milan and the cheap Esselunga supermarket.
Which makes logistical sense.
Right, but spend the core of your trip actually based further up the lake in Menaggio or Lino.
Moving on to safety, solo travel, and comfort. The great news here is that Lake Como is incredibly safe. The risks are mostly petty or physical, not violent.
Yeah, let's contrast those risks.
Yeah.
In terms of crime, you are looking at petty pickpocketing, primarily occurring at the Como San Giovanni train station or in the dense crowds at the ferry docks.
Like most of Europe.
Exactly. It is opportunistic theft, not organized violent crime. Keep your hand on your wallet in a crowd, zip your bag, and you are fine.
The physical risks are actually far more pressing. We just talked about the nightmare of driving the SS 340.
Yeah, avoid that.
But there are also lake swimming hazards. The water is deep, it is surprisingly cold even in summer, and there is heavy, fast-moving motorboat traffic in certain channels. You have to stick strictly to designated swimming areas.
And for families with young kids, be hyper-aware that many of the village ferry docks are completely unfenced.
Wait, really? No fences at all?
None. It's just a sheer stone drop right into deep water, so you have to keep a very close physical grip on young children.
That's terrifying. Are there any local scams to watch out for?
There are a couple. The dossier highlights the unofficial lake taxi touts hanging around the Como ferry dock. They look official, and they will aggressively offer you a private boat tour to Bellagio for 60 to 100 euros.
When the public ferry literally does the exact same route, past the exact same villas, for 5 to 10 euros.
Exactly. Just say a firm no and keep walking to the ticket office.
What's the other scam?
The other scam is restaurants displaying menus without prices in the window. The rule in Italy is simple. A menu without prices is a price you will profoundly regret. Walk away.
As for demographics, the dossier gives Lake Como an excellent rating for solo female travelers.
Which is great to hear.
Yeah, Italy sometimes gets a reputation for unwanted attention in certain southern cities, but Lake Como is very family-oriented, well-policed, and extremely safe. Varenna and Menaggio in particular are well-lit, quiet, and full of families in the evening.
And speaking of families, the main warning, aside from the unfenced docks, is the cobblestones.
Oh, the cobblestone.
In evil, cobbled streets are the mortal enemy of the pushchair. If your child is under walking age, bring a baby carrier, not a stroller, or you will be physically miserable dragging it up the stairs of Bellagio.
That is a pro tip right there. Good to know. And if anything does go wrong, medically speaking, the infrastructure is solid. The main hospital is Ospedale Sant'Anna down in Como City, and there are pharmacies. Just look for the glowing green cross in almost all of the lake towns for basic supplies.
Now we arrive at the best part of the dossier, the best moments and the honest disappointments.
Let's start with the magic. Because despite the crowds, the costs, and the traffic jams, this place is legendary for a reason.
It truly is.
The dossier paints this incredible picture of 6:00 a.m. in Varenna. The ferries haven't started running yet. The lake is perfectly flat, like a pane of glass. There is mist hanging low in the mountain valleys. There is absolute silence except for the sound of the water lapping against the stone steps.
Wow. And they make a profound point about that.
Yeah.
Nothing in a glossy travel photograph prepares you for that feeling, because no tourist is taking photographs at 6:00 a.m.
They're all asleep.
Right. That silence, that momentary ownership of the landscape is the ultimate luxury.
Another piece of magic they highlight, stage 4 of the Sentiero del Viandante. It's a completely free 8-kilometer walking trail that goes from Varenna to Bolano. You walk past ancient dry stone walls, you get sweeping mountain views, and you escape the crowds entirely because most tourists won't hike.
There is also Villa Carlotta in May. For a very reasonable €10 entry fee, you get terraced gardens with 70,000 blooming plants, azaleas, rhododendrons, and inside the villa, you can see original sculptures by Canova.
And it's not as packed as Balbianello.
Right. It is far quieter and arguably just as beautiful as the more famous, heavily hyped villas.
And finally, a simple sunset aperitivo in Menaggio's Piazza Garibaldi. You pay €5 or €6 for an Aperol Spritz. They bring you small plates of food included in the price, and you are surrounded by actual locals walking their dogs while the lake turns deep orange behind the mountains.
That sounds perfect. But, the dossier is equally clear about the honest disappointments. They don't pull their punches at all.
Yeah, we have to talk about Bellagio in July again. 10,000 visitors crammed into a town built for 3,000.
It's just not fun.
It is an honest disappointment because the beauty of the architecture is completely obscured by the sheer volume of human bodies. The famous stone staircase you see on Instagram is literally impassable.
Then there is Via del Balbianello. It is a stunning 18th century villa on a wooded promontory. But the cinematic hype from James Bond and Star Wars has created expectations that a modest historic villa simply cannot meet.
The hype trap.
Yeah, you have to book weeks in advance, you pay a premium, and you are rushed through the property in 30 to 45 minutes because they have to keep the queue moving. It is a classic hype trap.
And the final disappointment. The beach myth. I need to recalibrate your expectations right now if you are listening. Do not pack your beach towel expecting a sandy shoreline.
Right.
There are no real sandy beaches on Lake Como. It's rocks, or it's €5 to €15 private lidos with lounge chairs set up on concrete slabs, or it's a hotel pool. Do not pack for a beach holiday.
Which serves as a perfect pivot to the alternatives. If the crowds, the costs, or the lack of beaches put you off, Phil and H offer two specific alternatives in northern Italy that deliver a similar vibe with different logistics.
I love that they included this. First up, Lake Garda. It's about 100 kilometers east. The major selling point here, it actually has real beaches.
Real beaches.
Sand and pebble shores in places like Sirmione and Lasise.
And it is 15 to 20% cheaper across the board. The town of Sirmione is essentially the Bellagio equivalent. It's a beautiful peninsula with a castle and thermal spas. But the lake itself offers much more infrastructure for families who want to actually swim and play by the water.
Alternative 2 is Lake Orta. It's about 60 kilometers west of Como, closer to Piedmont. The dossier says it sees a mere fraction of the crowds.
Yeah, it is largely unknown to international tourists. The main village, Orta San Giulio, is incredibly preserved, arguably more medieval in feel than Bellagio.
Oh, wow.
And you can take a €4 rowboat out to a tiny island monastery in the center of the lake. And the pricing is like stepping back in time. You can get a room at a historic spot like the Hotel Beau Rivage for around €95 a night.
€95. No celebrity associations, no capacity limits at the villas, no mayors talking about entry fees. It is exactly what Lake Como was 20 or 30 years ago before the internet found it.
And that brings us to the final summation of the dossier. The Is It Worth It matrix. Phil and H run through their final verdicts for every type of traveler.
Let's run through them. For the backpacker, yes. But only if you base in Como City or Menaggio, utilize the hostel network, and treat Bellagio strictly as an early morning strike mission before the crowds arrive.
For the mid-range traveler, yes. Again, conditionally.
Yeah.
Base in Varenna or Menaggio, eat intelligently at local trattorias away from the waterfront. And it is genuinely one of the most beautiful experiences in Europe.
For the family, yes.
Yeah.
If you self-cater in an agriturismo in the hills, book months in advance, and avoid the July crush of Bellagio completely.
For the luxury traveler, yes, unconditionally. If you have the massive budget for a place like Grand Hotel Tremezzo, the lake performs flawlessly. You are entirely insulated from the overtourism via private boat transfers and exclusive terraces.
And finally, for the digital nomad or the solo long-term living setup, and go to Bologna or Lecco instead. Como is a holiday destination, not a functional hub for remote workers.
And with that, we have covered the entirety of their dossier.
We really have. And to explicitly conclude this review, I'm going to read you the exact final line from their source material. That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.
It's a masterful breakdown of travel reality, honestly.
It really is. And it leaves me with a thought I want to pass on to you, the listener, as we wrap up today. We started this deep dive talking about George Clooney's 10 million euro villa and the 30 euro hostel down the road. We talked about the gap.
The massive gap.
Right. But what if the true definition of luxury in modern travel has completely changed? What if luxury isn't the 2,000 euro hotel room anymore?
That's a great point.
What if ultimate luxury is simply possessing the logistical knowledge to walk through an empty, silent medieval square at 6:00 a.m., listening to the water lap against the stones, while everyone else is trapped in a 2-hour traffic jam on the SS 340? Take that logistics-first mindset, that knowledge of where and when to look, and apply it to your next vacation. Because maybe, just maybe, the best views are still free if you know how to find them.